Hey, PLO Mastermind, how is it going? My name is Ryan, aka Fitz, and today this is going to be a video talking about the facing 3-bets in 5-card Omaha. The first thing we're going to be looking at today is a bit of a frequency overview, and then we'll be diving a bit deeper into sort of what kind of hand classes are folding and 4-betting, see if we can notice some patterns there and some simplifications that we can give you guys. And then also going into some more exploitative adjustments. So we'll start off with a little table here looking at our fold versus 3-bet frequencies. On the left-hand side is our position that we open raise from, and then the top bar is going to be the position that is 3-betting us. And the first thing that you'll notice is that we are not doing a lot of folding to 3-bets in general, especially when we are in position. Very, very few folding versus 3-bets when we are in position and the blinds 3-bet us. But even when we are out of position post-flop, we are still not going to do a lot of folding. And that's primarily because in 5-card compared to 4-card, equities do run a bit closer. And also on top of that, it's very easy to have a double-suited hand. It's very easy to have a nut-suited hand. And those kind of components allow us to call 3-bets more, or at least respond to 3-bets with by 4-betting or calling. And the other thing that you might notice is that the fold with 3-bet frequencies looks similar in some instances. So for example, early position, if we are going to be out of position post-flop, we are only folding 10% regardless of whether we are facing a 3-bet from MP cutoff or button. And that's just because the way the solver is constructing its 3-betting range from these positions against early position, it's going to 3-bet relatively the same frequencies, relatively the same hand, around 5%. It is changing a little bit, but because it's so similar, how we respond as early position against these three players, for example, is going to be the same for the most part. You can see the pattern is also consistent with MP as well. But moving on from that, we'll look at our 4-bet frequencies, and again, you can see that they are relatively high still in 5-card Omaha. And the pattern is consistent in regarding to responding to MP cutoff button as the EP player. Again, because the range is very similar from the 3-better. And the other thing you might notice as well is that when we are in position, we tend to do a bit less 4-betting. And that's because we have obviously being in position post-flop is really strong. And the higher the SPR, the more we benefit from being in position. And as a result, we tend to 4-bet a bit less. And in terms of these frequencies here, you can see like from early position, we're 4-betting at quite a high amount. And this is mainly because aces make up such a big portion of our early position range. And when we are in early position, for example, or MP, we're pretty much never 4-betting hands that aren't aces. There are some exceptions. There's a few hands mixed in there, like hands like ace, jack, 10, 8, 7, double suited pure. But there's not too many hands other than that. But as we start to work our way down towards cutoff versus button, for example, we start implementing more of those hands that aren't ace-ace into our 4-betting range. So even though our frequencies is a lot higher when we are opening a tighter range, the actual arrangement of hands is going to be a fair amount looser when we are facing a 3-bet cutoff versus button, for example. So do just keep that in mind. Let's go now into sort of what hand classes we are folding with. We'll start off with our unpaired hands. This is the hand category that is going to be folding the most. And there's a few consistent patterns that are making us fold even more than the 18% cutoff versus button and 10% button versus small blinds. And the first one is when we have a hand that is trip, monotone, or chord suited. We are folding at quite a high frequency. You can see 54% cutoff versus button 3-bet and 26% button versus small blind 3-bet. And this is for a few reasons. We mentioned before about how easy it is to have a double suited hand, how easy it is to have a nut suited hand as well. And when we don't have, when we have a trip or chord or monotone suited hand, it makes not only it very hard to play our hand post flop, but on top of that, it's because our opponent is so likely to have a double flush draw and also nutted flush draws. When we don't have those components, when we just have the single suited hand with a trip, quad, or monotone suit, it becomes very likely we're going to be dominated post flop. We're going to have poor playability, all those kinds of things. And if we look at some hand examples that are folding in different scenarios, you can see ace, king, queen, 9, 7 triple suited to the nuts, and ace, king at 9, 8, 6 quad suited is folding button versus small blind as well. So even though these hands look very strong, even if you're coming from a 4-card background, they just don't perform well against a 3-betting range because, I mean, if you think about the top 10% of hands, they're going to be very, very often have the nut suit, very, very often double suited, even double suited pure. And these hands just play so poorly against that kind of range, even if we do have that nut suit. The other main pattern in terms of our folding range is going to be when we have an ace that doesn't have the nut suit. And you can see here we're folding even more than when we had a trip, quad, or monotone suited hand. And that is, again, for the same reasons. It's so likely that our opponent not only has a double suited hand, but also that nut suit, which makes hands like ace, queen, jack, 9, 7, and ace, 10, 9, 6, 5 very, very weak because they are so likely to be dominated. Even though they are relatively well connected, they are double suited. We are just performing so poorly against a 3-betting range that we would prefer to fold these hands. Also, something to mention as well is that the fold examples that I'm using in these slides are going to be the folds that are basically the best hands that are folding. So, for example, this hand here, ace, king, 9, 8, 6. If say for example the 6 here was a 7 instead, then this hand would probably start to do a bit of calling, or maybe it's a pure call, that kind of thing. So these are basically the best hands that you are folding. And if we move on to our paired hands, you can see that, again, the pattern is consistent from before in that we are folding triple or quad suited hands a lot more. And we obviously can't have monotone suited hands when we have a pair. But there's still a lot of folding with this hand class for the same reasons as we mentioned before. A hand like ace, king, 6, 6, 5, or a hand like ace, king, jack, 7, 7 are going to be folding in their respective spots. And again, the pattern with the non-nut suit holding the ace, again, is holding true in this instance as well. Hands like ace, king at 9, 7, 7, and ace, 10, 10, 9, 6 are going to be folding as well. You can kind of see that this is a very consistent pattern across all our folding hand classes. Also, if we look at our 2 pairs as well, trip suited 2 pairs are going to be doing the most folding in general. That you can see that they're not folding button versus small blind, and that's because, well, we're really not folding much button versus small blind with our 2 pair hands. You can see here that we are only folding 1% cutoff versus button in these hands, but a hand like even king, king, jack, 9, 9 trip suited is going to be folding cutoff versus button. So it's really important that when you are thinking about these hands, that you are taking these components into consideration. And again, just to sum it all up, or I guess to maybe make it even more clear as to why you should be folding these hands, being the trip, quad, monotone suited hands, or non-nut ace X hands. When we look at our folding range from cutoff versus button, 72% of our folds are going to be from these hand classes, or from hands that are non-nut ace X hands or trip, quad, monotone suited hands. And then, in fact, from button versus small blind, now 88% of our folds come from these hands as well. So it's really important that when you have a hand that you're not sure about pre-flop, when you face a 3-bet, you don't know whether to call or fold. If you have either a trip, quad, or monotone suited hand, or a non-nut ace X hand, you probably need to be very, very cautious in regarding to continuing with those particular hands. And in terms of our 4-bets, there's a few things we can look at here, but I firstly want to bring up a couple of very simplified concepts that will help you get a good grasp of 4-betting in 5-card. And the first one is that we're basically never 4-betting a hand unless it is double suited or it has ace ace. And we mentioned before that it's very easy to have a double suited hand. And as a result, if we don't have a double suited hand or we don't have ace ace, our hand just really does not perform well as a 4-bet. This is kind of similar in 4-card for the most part. There's not too many hands apart from ace ace that are 4-betting, that aren't double suited basically, but I do just want to sort of reiterate that if you look at the PLO trend from pretty much any position, we're not full betting unless we have these hands. And also, once we do decide to full bet, we're never folding to a 5-bet. There's just too much equity in our hand when we do decide to full bet that even if we are up against aces, we still are doing okay. For example, a hand like Ace King King, I think it's Ace King King Queen 10, has double suited pure has around 38% equity against any double suited aces combo. So you can see that there is still enough equity to stack off pre-flop with these kinds of hands, even if they don't seem to perform very well against aces. In 4-card, there are some hands like Ace King King that decide to full bet fold as like a full bet bluff, but in 5-card, that is not going to be the case. So if we look at our hand classes that are full betting, we are going to be using some unpaired hands. Not very frequently though. They're very specific hand types, and you'll sort of be able to notice patterns when we look at them. So if you look at our 5-card rundowns, you can see hands like Ace Queen Jack 9-8 and Ace Queen 10-9-8. They're both double suited pure. They had the nut suit, and they're very connected and on the higher end. The same thing is true for our 4-card rundowns that are 4-betting. Ace Jack 10-9-7, Ace Jack 10-8-7. I put in Ace Jack 10-7, Ace Jack 10-8-7, sorry. Double triple suited, because it is one of the very, very few unpaired hands that is double triple suited that is 4-betting. Mainly our 4-bets are coming from our double suited pure hands, but I thought I would throw that in there because it is just a really good hand to go ahead and 4-bet and makes it into the cut. Also, these 4-bets are going to be used cutoff versus button and button versus small blinds for the most part. But once you, again, start making your ranges tighter or looser, you're going to start expanding or contracting these ranges. As I mentioned before, when we're in early position, these hands or these hand classes are very infrequently 4-betting compared to when we are on the button or in cutoff. Hands also from our 3 Broadway hand class like Ace Jack 10-8-5, or from a 2 Broadway class Ace Jack 8-7-5. Two other good examples. And the other thing you might notice about our hand is all these hand examples is that they often unblock kings and sometimes unblock queens. And this is going to be very similar to if you come from a 4-card background, is that when we 4-bet our unpaired hands or our hands that aren't aces, we really want to unblock kings and queens, because those are the kinds of hands that are going to 3-bet fold the most often in a GTO scenario. And as a result, we want to, with these kinds of hands, they have good equity and good playability, but getting a hand like Ace King King, Ace Queen Queen to fold is very beneficial, and we want to unblock those hands. So just to sort of reiterate on our unpaired hands, again, we want to unblock the king for the most part and sometimes the queen, and we're always double suited with a nut suit and have good connectivity, primarily going to be double suited pure. If we look at what hand classes are 4-betting from our 1-pair and double paired, you can see that we're 4-betting at a lot higher frequency. And one thing, obviously, is that these are going to be hands like Ace-Ace for the most part, but not all of our Ace-Ace are going to be 4-betting. In a button versus cutoff or a button versus small blind scenario, Ace-Ace is only 4-betting around 90% of the time when it is double suited. And then single suited is going to go down a fair amount. But a hand like Ace-Ace Queen 6 double suited is a fringe hand, so it's one of the lowest EV 4-bets from our Ace-Ace category. If you want to learn a little bit more about 4-betting with those with Ace-Ace, check out Fabian's video on that. But apart from that, we're not really doing much 4-betting when we don't have Ace-Ace and we have a 1-pair or double pair hand. There is some exceptions. There is some Broadway hands like Ace King Queen 10-9 or Ace Queen Queen 10-9. But we're only 4-betting those hands as the out of position player post. If we're going to be the out of position player post flop, and it's really only in specific scenarios like cutoff versus button and small blind versus button. If we are on the tighter end of our range, pre-flop, so we're from early position, these hands aren't going to 4-bet at all either. Also, in terms of our double pair hands, we're also never 4-betting them unless we have Ace-Ace. So the other thing to look at as well is what if our opponent is over 3-betting, and I think this is a fairly common scenario, especially on the app games. You'll see a lot of maniacs So what kind of hand classes can we start to expand or look at for betting more? So again, it's going to be relatively similar components to our full betting range in general. We're not probably going to be using double suited hands, or sorry, non-double suited hands, so single suited hands, unless they have ace-ace. But we can start to look to expand the hands that I mentioned before. So hands from our 4 and 5 card rundowns, maybe they don't need to be double suited pure as much, even if maybe they are double triple suited. A hand like ace, queen, 10, 8 is fine to go ahead and 4-bet in this scenario when our opponent is 3-betting quite light. Even a hand like ace, king, queen, jack, 5 is going to become a profitable 4-bet. And even though we do block that king, what's happening here with these kinds of hands is that basically we start dominating the single suited variants that our opponent is going to be 3-betting. So if you start to notice your opponent 3-betting single suited variants of these hands, it's very likely that you should start 4-betting even as loose as ace, king, queen, jack, 5, for example. Again, we can start 4-betting as well. Some Broadway pairs that we might not have been 4-betting before. Even ace, king, king, 10, 9 with the non-nut suit is going to be a potential 4-bet, or ace, king, king, 9, 7. Again, even though we have kings, we just dominate so much of our opponent's 3-betting range, and as a result, these hands become now profitable 4-bets. Same with ace, king, 10, 8, 7, and ace, king, 9, 8, 7. So just in general, you're able to expand these hand classes more, and the king blocker, while it is relevant in some instances, it's not too much of a problem because we are going to end up dominating much more of our opponent's 3-betting range, and he's also much less likely to have aces. So to finish up, we'll go through a summary. And in terms of our forwarding range, it's mainly going to come from the hands that are trip, quad, or monotone suited, or non-nut suits with an ace. We talked a bit about why, but when you have a hand that has one of these components, it's fairly likely you should consider folding. And if you don't, it's fairly likely you should probably continue in one way or the other. Also remember that we are basically never 4-betting a hand unless we have ace-ace, or we are in fact double suited. And that also remember that not all of our aces are going to be 4-bets in general. And we're never folding to a 5-bet. In terms of where our 4-betting range comes from, we are mainly going to take our 4-bets from decent to strong ace-ace. Depending on what range we are facing or what range we have, we tend to open up how many aces we are 4-betting, or from if we are against a looser range. But if we are against a tighter range, we have to consider that we need to start 4-betting mainly our stronger ace-ace combos. We're also 4-betting high connected double suited pure unpaired hands with the nut suit primarily, and we generally want to be unblocking king, king, and queen, queen unless we are very, very connected. Or maybe we are facing someone who is 3-betting a ton. So that'll be it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.